Hey guys, welcome back to Real Housewives Recaps. Today, we're talking Courtiers. Ooh, I don't think that was fancy enough, especially for a Friday, right? Let's try that again. Courtiers, darling. Hi guys, I'm so glad you're here. Now I'm going to go ahead and flash this on the screen. Today we are talking Courtiers. You know this, the book, but we're also talking the actual help provided to Harry and Meghan, Harold and Smeg, Dumb and Dumber throughout. And so I'll be referring back to these people. Don't worry, you don't have to know them. I'll flash them up on the screen. But I just wanted to let you know there'll be a lot of names in today's because we're getting into who was helping as the couple were being jerks to them. I'm just so glad you're here. I don't think I take enough time in the beginning of my videos to say that. So I want to say that now. Happy Friday. I'm happy. I'm just thrilled you're here. Your response to Courtiers has been fantastic, and I just really appreciate you, and I want you to know that. I really do. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all the love and support. If you want to further support the show, you know how to do it. Patreon. Patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps. We got lots of fun stuff going on over there. We're doing recaps of all the cringiest moments, from the Ellen interviews to the Oprah to all of it. We're talking through it all. And by we, I mean my husband Jay and I. We're having a lot of fun doing it. So check us out over there. We have executive producers to thank, which I will be thanking at the end of this show. But I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who supports over at Patreon. So definitely check that out if you're interested. But without further ado, let's get into, ready? Courtiers, darling. Okay. Courtiers. So we are on chapter 14, exit plans. So those reading along with me, we're starting off on page 283, and things are tense. With these two, things are always tense. Can you imagine? I always say that. Like, can you imagine being in a room with these two? Ooh, that would be rough. So we start off with Prince Harry is looking nervous. He's in a hotel in Malawi, and it's the end of his first day of a 3-day visit as part of his 2019 tour of Southern Africa. So, there are two problems right now. One, Meghan is not with him. Isn't that weird? That was a direct quote from the book. Apparently, she is his security blanket. It's because she's his mommy, right? And so, he always feels better when his mommy is around. So weird. Anyway, she was with Archie in Johannesburg, where Harry will join her in a couple of days. But the other problem, he's about to have to tell the Queen that he and Meghan are going to detonate a BOMB under what's been, until then, a successful autumn tour. And apparently, Hazmat has been, whatever you want to call him, Harold and Fraud, they decided, you know what? It's time to release an announcement that Meghan's going to sue the Mail on Sunday. Now, referring back to Tom Bower's Revenge book, his point of view was that they were so full of themselves and the tour was going so well, they're like, you know what? Let's go ahead and do this now. And the assistants were like, are you sure you want to do this? Oh, yeah, I'm still flashing pictures of the assistants in the background. That's what you're looking at there. Anyway, are you sure you want to do this? And of course, Harold and Fraud think they know better than everybody else. So what do? They're like, yeah, we need to do this now. But apparently, according to Valentine, sorry, I always do that. I have a friend named Valentine, so I always want to call him Valentine. But Valentine is explaining that Harold gets really nervous when he has to call the Queen. So I think that's hilarious. But that would show a modicum of respect that I just don't believe he had for the Queen. But anyway, he and Meghan had this all-out war they're waging against the tabloids, calling it a, quote, ruthless campaign against Meghan, vilifying her on a daily basis. I find this so funny because this is what they're claiming. Meanwhile, we're finding out what's going on behind the scenes and how she's treating her staff. So can you imagine? It's not funny, is not the right word. It's horrible. Imagine being, working in this position that you've been, working your way up to. You end up working for this one, and she treats you horribly, and yet she's meanwhile suing the Mail on Sunday and calling it like a ruthless campaign against her, and they're making her the villain. Meanwhile, she's being the villain. So Harry will go on to say, quote, destroys people and destroys lives. And I will go on to say, what did you guys do to the royal family? And what did you do in your book Spare? Riddle me that. Okay. These actions will put the couple back on the front pages in Britain and will overshadow everything they've done for the last few days on their tour. So remember, Revenge went into this. They explained that it was a great tour. Things were going well, but then they did this. They came out like petulant children. It did not go well for them. Back to this book. As we've seen before, Harry often has an attack of the nerves before he has to speak to the Queen. I find that hilarious, and I kind of love knowing that. Just a hunch, Meghan thinks she's better than everybody, so she probably doesn't have the same affliction. Think Tiara. Okay, so the whole thing was, we know this. We know why she was suing. We went into detail about this, but it had to do with her relationship with her father, Thomas Markle. Long, painful story that's been told repeatedly at length. We've discussed it, right? But Valentine goes into the story about how he's supposed to walk her down the aisle, and then he was exposed by the Mail on Sunday for having posed for fake paparazzi pictures. You guys are amazing because you pointed out that you think that she hired the paparazzi, and that would not... It was so interesting to hear, but it's not shocking, right? It sounds like something she would do. Allegedly. Okay. So the August after the wedding, she hand wrote that long, stupid note to her dad where she pretended like she was, I don't know, the victim. She's like, Dear Daddy, blah, blah, blah. Love, Meghan Markle. Yes, she signed it with her last name. Yeah, that's what tells me none of it's real, and she knew it was going to be leaked. All right. So the whole thing was Knopf was going to be deposed and had to describe in a witness statement how Meghan sent him a series of text messages in August of 2018 about the letter she had planned to write. She asked him to review it and said, quote, obviously, everything I've drafted is with the understanding that it could be leaked. So I'm being meticulous in my word choice, but please do let me know if anything stands out for you as a liability. See? Everything's a lie. She knew it was going to be leaked. Everything's a lie. Don't believe it. Don't believe any of it. So, again, talking about this tour they're on when they decided to launch this lawsuit, Valentine goes into, this was one of those pivotal moments where he, looking back, can see that the final rift was going to be inevitable. Their split was going to be inevitable. They're ignoring the guidance of people who are supposed to advise them. It seems none of the staff that was accompanying the couple on the tour thought it was a good idea to go ahead and do this, to release this statement, but the Sussexes, they do what they want. They're Cartman from South Park. Harry and Meghan were, quote, on their own path and nothing was going to stop them. Isn't it funny? So, again, this just shows their whole thing was nobody at the palace helped Meghan. And meanwhile, we have story after story of person after person trying to help them, trying to stop them from imploding. Yet there's like, no, we do what we want. And yet afterwards, after the fact, they're going to claim, nobody helped us. We were on our own. You know, that same old bullshit that they always claim, right? But again, here's example of people saying, not a good idea. Don't want to do that. Pay attention. Anyway, all right. In the months after Australia tour, autumn 2018, the relationship between Jason Knopf and Harry and Meghan was effectively over. Now, remember, Knopf was the one that had drafted or wrote the email and was keeping tabs on this bullying thing. So many people were trusting him and talking to him about what was going on, and then he was having to let his boss, who was William's personal secretary, know, or private secretary, no, hey, we got a problem, that sort of thing. All right. So in December, Meghan decided, remember she wore that stupid black one-shoulder Givenchy dress, and she made a surprise appearance at the British Fashion Awards. I find it hilarious that Meghan would go to any kind of fashion, anything, because we've seen how Meghan dresses. I sound like a frog there because I was talking out of the side of my mouth like I would if you were sitting here with me at my table and we're talking shit about her. In fact, let me talk a little bit more crap. I would never normally point this out because it's just not my nature, but I'm going there. The thing I remember about this event is that the way she held her belly. And that's, again, it's just not my nature. I just wouldn't normally notice that. If somebody's heavily pregnant, their hand's probably on their belly. It was so freaking weird in this situation. And I've been pregnant, and I don't think I did this. I don't think I held onto my belly this much. I thought it was very odd. And I thought maybe it was nerves, but now, hearing things and knowing some stuff and, well, just hearing things, allegedly. Could it be that she's holding on to a moon bump? I don't know. Could it be to hold it up so it didn't slip out of place? Maybe. I don't know. I just found it very odd. It strikes me odd like the hand holding does. Again, that's not something I would ever notice. I mean, I'm not that observant of a person in terms of if somebody's holding hands in front of me, cool, I wouldn't even notice it. I hold hands with my partner all the time. But the obsessive amount of hand holding, it does. You pick up on it. If you have a head, you can see these things. So yeah, I could see this and I kept thinking, well, this is very odd. But okay, so you guys had pointed out the last time I talked about this that she basically gate crashed and showed up to this thing. Well, this book, Valentine, basically says the same thing, that she just decided she was going to go. I love Rosamund Pike there on the stage with her, and people were saying it's not fair because she was probably meant to speak, but she had to step aside and let Meghan say whatever bullshit she's talking about while she holds on to her belly. But Valentine goes into this as an example of how when she would get mad at somebody, like she was mad at Knopf, she just refused to communicate with him. So she didn't let him know that she was even going to go. She told her private secretary, Samantha Cohen, that she was going, but then basically did the middle school thing and swore to secrecy. So Sam Cohen didn't really have a choice. So nobody knew what was happening. She just kind of showed up and... yeah, it was her way and no one else's ever, it sounds like. So, side note, Knopf ended up standing down. He was over these two. And he stood down as a communications secretary, but he ended up working with William and Catherine as a special advisor. And he later became chief executive for the couple's charitable body, the Royal Foundation. What's interesting is we'll see that a lot. We'll see that a lot with these courtiers, these people working with Harry and Meghan. They would get so fed up that they would want to quit after just a few months. Things would go really bad. And they'd end up working for William and Catherine for years. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out, oh, hey, things must be going really badly working for Harold and Fraud. So very odd. So the bullying accusations accelerated a major shakeup at Kensington Palace. Harry and Meghan were splitting their household from William and Catherine's. The reason for the split have been well documented before. Partly it was due to the rift between William and Harry, which had its origins in a remark when William, back in 2016, gave Harold some very sage advice. P.S. You don't have to leave me a comment. I know his birth name is not Harold. It's an inside joke from Spare. I always get those comments. It's so crazy, even to this day. His name's not Harold. I know. Okay. William gave Harold of Harold and Fraud some very sage advice that says, don't feel like you have to rush this. Like, take your time. He literally says, take as much time as you need to get to know this girl. Well, Harold, ever offended at, everything and confused by everything, he was offended. Or at least he told Meghan. Meghan told him, we're offended. But by William giving him this advice, Harry was, again, offended, and he was mad that William referred to her as this girl. I'm thinking William showed huge restraint because I could think about 30 adjectives I'd like to call her. A lot of them rhyme with thunder Smunt. But anyway, Harold, according to the book, regarded this as snobbish. Their relationship was then badly damaged. Okay, so the other reason for splitting the households was the natural progressions of William's life. When the brothers were young, it made sense to keep them together, but then William had his destiny, which Harry did not. Harry could have had a destiny, but Harry was too busy not paying attention and being a whiny baby and marrying the wrong person. I love this picture. It so perfectly sums it up. Look at the anger on Harold. Look at Fraud back in the back. Look at how regal Catherine looks. Look at William and Charles. I love it. I love that they have to stand in the back. I'm a petty bitch, and it works perfectly. Back into the staff and the bullying allegations. Part of the falling out with William was the sense that the staff were not being treated well by Harry and Meghan, and that kind of sped up the process of splitting up the houses. So Harold and Fraud decided they needed a new communications secretary in early 2019 as a process of setting up their own household. So they landed on, let's see, what was her name? I have it right here. Sarah Latham? Sarah Latham. She was a PR big hitter who was going to be in charge of communications. Yeah, lots of people. Sorry, I'm just going through these names. Basically, in 2019, a small group of advisors got together to work out the mechanics of separating the households. The trouble was Harry and Meghan wanted very different things to what Buckingham Palace was prepared to offer. Now, Valentine goes out of his way to explain that Buckingham was being more than generous with these two. They quote, bent over backwards to try to accommodate them, said one senior palace official. We gave over half the master's rooms, the master of the household, what was known as the master's corridor, to allow them to have a very effective office within Buckingham Palace. And it was a big team effort all around, try to help them and to give them all the encouragement we possibly could. So again, the Queen had tried to help. The palace was bending over backwards. Everybody was trying to help these two. Of course not, if you ask them. Always the victim, right? But this would not do. They wanted their independence. So they were trying to... Now, I've heard reports that she was trying to move right into Windsor Castle. No. They had their home of Frogmore Cottage, which is near Windsor Castle. And the palace was like, no. Okay, let me break it down. Basically, they wanted to keep an eye on him. He spells it out here saying that it was a decision not by the men in gray suits, but by the Queen and the Prince of Wales, who was Charles at the time, of course. And they were keenly aware of the need to avoid unnecessary extravagance. And they knew if left to their own devices, these two, unnecessary extravagance. So the Sussexes did get a big team, which they were going to need, given the worldwide attention that they sure thought they were going to generate. Well, they did, just not in the way that they thought. So it included a private secretary, 2 assistant private secretaries, communications secretary, and 2 other communications officers, as well as administrative staff. That's a lot of people. Again, remember the claims they had nobody helped Meghan. She was thrown to the wolves, fed to the wolves, whatever the stupid line she said was. All right, so this is where that Sarah Latham, I believe you pronounce her name, is brought in. Media savvy, media friendly. It starts off all roses and champagne. They were excited to have her, and she was excited to have them. I'm going to read you a quote that I find very funny, not for Sarah Latham, but for the situation. At first, Latham and Meghan were golden combination, she told a friend. I love this job. It's amazing. Latham would go round for lunch with the Duchess at Frogmore Cottage to talk things over. Latham thought she understood Meghan, who believed that the press hated her, and she was a victim of all the isms, racism, in the media. So Latham was being fed these lines, right? That she was a victim and she was American and thought that the cultural differences were getting to her and just all this stuff, right? But soon, well, to quote the book, it did not take long for the shine to wear off. Now, in the meantime, that Samantha that was working with them always made clear that it was like working for a couple of teenagers. They were impossible and they pushed her to the limit. She was absolutely miserable. So she ended up being replaced by this lady, Fiona. I'll never be able to say her last name, Mickawam? That one. So the Sussexes now had an all-female top team. Okay, so to clear this up, here's Sarah Latham here. It did not take long for her shine to wear off. Spring-summer that year saw a series of battles with the media and some spectacular own goals by Meghan and Harry. I think that's a fancy way of saying, yeah, they're full of shit. When their son Archie was due in May, Meghan was determined to, quote, avoid the indignity of a royal birth. So she was not going to do the steps thing. We know the drill, right? Well, Latham was trying to explain why people do that and why the press might turn on them for not doing that. They ignored her and did it anyway. Then they put out a statement saying the Duchess has gone into labor, only for it to emerge later that she had in fact given birth some 8 hours before. And so the press sympathy was quickly evaporating. Later, when Archie was christened, the couple refused to let the godparents be named, and Valentine calls that a decision that lost them even more sympathy. So again, they're the perpetual victims, but Valentine's doing a good job of explaining all the reasons why the press not fans of these two. It's so funny. They do these things to piss off the press, and when the press calls them out on it, they get pissed, right? It's a crazy cycle, but it's fun to watch. So that Latham lady is having to constantly battle on behalf of Harry and Meghan while taking all this abuse from them. That's a direct quote from the book. She also found herself getting far more involved arranging their private lives than would normally be appropriate. So they're called private secretaries, but according to the book, despite the job title, they're there to look after their official lives, but not for Harry and Meghan. They'll do what they want there. Another thing that comes up here is this is the time where they were getting criticized for their excessive use of private jets. And that, remember, I talked about the ridiculousness of that he went to speak, talking about Harold. Harry went and spoke in Sicily, and it was about saving the environment, and yet, of course, he took private jets. In fact, he and Meghan took 4 flights on private jets in less than a week to visit Ibiza in the south of France. So that, of course, prompted the media to accuse them of hypocrisy, and that Sarah was being put in the middle, and she was advising Harry against taking the private jets. Of course, they don't like to be called out on their hypocrisy, but they will continue to do the things that cause people to call them hypocrites. The other thing that comes up in this part of the book that I found so interesting is, again, all these people are leaving, and including they bring up this private secretary, Amy Pickerel. Amy Pickerel. She was leaving, but she knew that if Meghan found out that it was about her that somebody was leaving, she'd make their life hell. According to the book, she'd make their life hell. And so they had to come up with reasons that had nothing to do with Meghan and tell her it was that in order for them to have a smooth leaving. That is the most narcissistic, abusive thing I've heard. I mean, that's ridiculous. They can't even finish out their time at a job that they've worked at if Meghan thought it was about her that they were leaving. So, of course, she would never learn from it anyway, but that's showing a totally well-balanced human being right there, right? Okay, at the time, the reason Pickerel gave for leaving was that she was joining her boyfriend in Germany, Well, what actually happened is she moved back to London within 3 months and ended up working for William. So she's been with him for years now, it sounds like, and doing just fine. So imagine that. She works perfectly well under Prince William, but can't really have such a great time under Hank and Skank. All right, I think that will do it for this part of the book. We'll keep going in the next episode. I so appreciate you all being here. I'm really enjoying recapping this, and I can't wait to see what other good gossip he's got, what other good stories, dirt, whatever you want to call it. I'm here for it. It's good. The tea. He's spilling the tea. Guys, thanks for being here. If you want to further support the show, check out patreon.com/Real Housewives Recaps, where you can become an executive producer. And I want to thank my executive producers for all the support. So I want to shout out and say a big thank you to Kristen, to Linda. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Paige. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you to Mary. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mr. K. Thank you to Kay. Thank you, Shauna. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Aaron and Frank. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Ann M. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Ann H. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Kay King. Thank you, Glynis. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Dewey. Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Adair. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Annette. And thank you, Barb G. I really appreciate you. If you've signed up recently, I will get your name and a shout out coming up very soon. Yeah, thank you all so much for all the love and support. Thank you for being here. Make sure you're subscribed. I hope you have just the best day, and I can't wait to talk more about this book. Lots to talk about. All right, I will talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.